Growing up, my absolute favorite genre of video game was stealth. I know for some people, stealth is the epitome of boring game mechanics, often boiling down to waiting around for ages before getting to do anything interesting. Unfortunately, I think this is true for a lot of stealth games. Styx Master of Shadows, for example, is one of my least favorite stealth games.
The f*** you say to me, you little shit?
Which makes me sad to say, because I've given it a good few plays, and I love the fantasy setting, but it's just never quite gripped me. And to be clear, I haven't played it all the way through. I've tried it a few times, and walked away wanting each time.
Do not bully people.
How stupid can you be?
But all that is to say, I understand the problems people seem to have with stealth as a game mechanic, because I've experienced stealth that I personally don't enjoy. I get it. However, I think there's absolutely a way to do stealth in assassination games correctly, properly. In my opinion, the absolute paragon of stealth/assassin games is Dishonored. For now, let's talk about why Dishonored 1, the game that started it all, is not only an excellent example of a perfect stealth game, but also one of my favorite games of all time. Sandbox is a term that's thrown around in the games industry pretty frivolously. Ubisoft in particular is an egregious perpetrator of misusing the word sandbox. In my mind, sandbox as a descriptor should be reserved for games where there's multiple ways of approaching a single problem, multiple solutions to puzzles, multiple approaches to roadblocks, multiple tools that can achieve the same thing but in different ways. You get the idea. With Ubisoft, they'll call Assassin's Creed a sandbox game, when in reality it's more of a collectathon of sorts. And collectathons can be super fun, but don't call them sandbox games, they're not. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, an actually pretty fun game that I think people purely sleep on because it's yet another Assassin's Creed, is very enjoyable, but it's absolutely not a sandbox game no matter how many times Ubisoft calls it that. There's one goal your character has, one path to take, one or two ways to raid and plunder, and the choices you've made by the end don't really change all that much. Plus, Ubisoft has some sort of intervention-worthy addiction to the same thing most AAA companies these days cannot help but do, selling progress in the game for real-world money. So while I would call Assassin's Creed Valhalla a good game, I would also say it's not worth your time while it's marred by the draconian dog-water philosophy the executives at Ubisoft enforce on their development teams. Now, let's talk about the game that corporate greed didn't tarnish. Dishonored is a perfect example of how to make choices actually feel meaningful in a game. This can come down to the huge decisions that you make, such as eliminating your targets with a knife in the gut, or a typically poetic, non-lethal option, but it also comes down to the moment-to-moment decisions you make. Games make a big hoopla about the morality of killing those in your way, but there's very rarely a game that does it properly in a way that has actual emotional impact. Spec Ops: The Line is one example, and Dishonored is another. But while Spec Ops: The Line revels in catching you off guard and allowing you to feel morally superior for long stretches of time before pulling the rug out from under you and forcing you to look face to face at the terrible things you've done while being none the wiser, Dishonored lets you know from the beginning that the bad things you do have impact. It is incredibly clear that the city of Dunwall is on the brink of collapse, in the throes of a plague that thrives on corpses, and you traipsing about the place, piling corpses even higher in your wake, is only going to make things worse. Not to mention, from the beginning of the game, you've been blamed for a heinous murder that you didn't commit, but running around murdering a bunch of essentially innocent guards simply for being in your way would logically convince absolutely no one of your innocence.
Someone drove a hot dog-shaped car through the window!
Driver's gone.
They could have killed someone.
Whose car is this?
Yeah, come on! Whoever did this, just confess. We promise we won't be mad.
So while the game puts you in a position where you want to prove everyone wrong, the easier path and the one with least conflict involves absolutely slaughtering every innocent you see. It's actually more difficult to play through Dishonored non-lethally, killing not a single soul, but it's the only way to have a satisfactory ending, one where you don't corrupt the very mind of the city's next leader through your bloodthirsty actions. I'm not exaggerating when I say that nearly every facet of this game has the capacity to change and react to how you choose to play it. If you do go on a murder spree tree like a steampunk Jack the Ripper, not only will the world react, but your closest confidants, the people who sprung you from prison, will begin to change in subtle and almost imperceptible ways. In the very first mission, before you're even cursed with the powers of the outsider, the city's announcer will change what they say based on how you left the prison. If you did so non-lethally, he'll just announce your escape and tell people to keep an eye out. But if you killed guards on the way out, the people who are framing you will immediately capitalize on it and announce that Corvo, the murderer of the Empress, has killed several brave watch officers during his prison escape. This right away demonstrates to the player that everything you do will either support or contradict the false allegations made against you, and it's up to you whether you care. We're about to get into pretty major spoiler territory because it's kind of the best way to explore what Dishonored does right. I personally would still say that this is a great game, even if you know the things I'm about to talk about. If you really want to avoid spoilers, please go play the game through at least once right now, then come back to the video when you're ready. But again, I think Dishonored is the sort of game where the spoilers don't much matter. The experience of actually playing through it is the fun part, even if you know where it's going, which is one reason I've played the game for more than 400 hours. It wasn't because I didn't know it was coming, I can promise you that. I'll put a timestamp here for when the major spoilers are done with, if you care, however. Okay, we ready for spoilers? Okay, let's talk about the betrayal. A lot of games do this, where the support network you've been relying on suddenly turns on you. It's typically midway through at a point where it'll make you feel like you have to claw your way back to the level of power you already had. It's kind of like an anime reset, like when Ichigo in Bleach has to re-earn his powers for the 12th time so he can beat Big Bad number 32, who's not even half as cool as Aizen. Anyway, the cool thing about the betrayal in Dishonored is that while it happens regardless of whether you've been a good little boy who non-lethally dispatches and or avoids his enemies, or if you've been a murderous psychopath, you can still see the reasoning they have for betraying you either way. If you've been slaughtering folks like crazy, you can tell your co-conspirators are pretty glad to be rid of you, and if you think about it, this makes perfect sense. No one's gonna be hyped that the guy running around in a skull mask, killing all the guards just doing their job, is being reinstated as royal protector, the bodyguard to the most powerful leader in the country. So them wanting to be rid of you on a high chaos, lethal run of the game is completely understandable, and you can't really blame them, morally bereft as they are. What I love, though, is that while you do still get betrayed on a good boy run of the game, you can see that the group is incredibly split about it. And although it's still a somewhat understandable move on their part, it's something that you can absolutely hold against them, unlike the other run, because their betrayal is somewhat of a moral imperative on a high chaos run. But when you've been nothing but a loyal asset to them, who only did their job in a non-lethal, low chaos way, their betrayal is purely self-serving. It spares them the effort of clearing your name, and instead allows them full access to the next ruler, letting them effectively rule through her. Now, the DLC actually reveals that they never would have ruled if not for the actions of the person who killed the Empress, but the DAO DLCs are so detailed they're worth their own video. The breakdown of the conspirators at the Hound Pit's pub is super interesting. In low chaos, not everyone wants to betray you, but it's been quietly established among them that it's the easiest option and the one with the best chance of actually securing the throne. In high chaos, however, they're all super eager to betray you because it makes sense. But doing so also degrades the loyalty they each have towards each other. In a low chaos ending, Havelock is sort of the mastermind who ends up poisoning everyone else, then effectively giving up at the end because he realizes how pointless it is when Corvo is coming for him. But in high chaos, all the conspirators turn on each other after dealing with Corvo having an all-out faction war on King Sparrow Island between Martin and his overseer zealots, Pilton and his rich boy guards, and Havelock and his loyal soldiers. In low chaos, Havelock locks Emily in a room with decent furnishings and waits for you at a dinner table. In high chaos, in a desperate attempt to salvage the ill-gotten gains he tricked you into gathering for him, Havelock dangles a young girl off of a lighthouse and is more than willing to jump off if you approach, killing both him and the innocent girl he spent all that time quote-unquote saving from her captors.
Let her go.
Very poor choice of words.
The difference in how the conspiracy dissolves at the end, I think, is pretty interesting and well done from a game design perspective. Even the world building will react to how you approach the game. Avoid being spotted by anyone while murdering those around you, and the wanted posters will just vaguely mention a crazed murderer on the streets. But if you do get spotted, then the mask you're wearing will show up on those posters. Play the game like a ghost, being seen by no one and only non-lethally dispatching your targets and avoiding everyone else, and there are no wanted posters because what would they be looking for? Almost every encounter you find has the potential to have been altered by the choices you've already made. Escape Coldridge Prison non-lethally and you'll encounter an overseer who willingly tells his brothers he's infected and that for their own safety they need to kill him. It's a respectful process that is in a weird, macabre way heartwarming to watch. Escape prison lethally, and you'll encounter overseers cornering their brother who's desperately denying his infection before they violently and forcefully murder him on the spot. The game is also packed to the brim with really cool hidden content. I'm not sure I've ever replayed Dishonored without finding a new thing that I didn't know was there.
So I think it's safe to say some people won't believe me when I say that every time I play the game, there's a new thing I discovered. Have some proof, bitch. I discovered this time through, didn't know, that if you go get the rat guts from Galvani's laboratory before going to Granny Rags, you get unique dialogue.
Oh, what's this? Oh, my, you've already been to Dr. Galvani's place.
First time finding it.
You collected up some of the pretty rat guts while you were there. Well, there's just one thing left to do, just a little nothing. You'll do it for me, won't you, dear? Take it all to the Bottle Street Gang distillery and drop it in with their medicine. Mix it up real good. That should straighten them out.
Boom. And you know what, just for a little bonus, I found something else out too. I didn't know this until this playthrough. I found this time through, I usually just go all the way up there, just because it's the easiest, simplest route. You can do this too, and then you come onto here. And would you look at that, you are already past those guards. I mean, you at least have a really good angle of attack on the bridge if you wanted to keep going. You can do this, onto this pipe. Speaking of cool secrets, I discovered the juggling game today. There's a minigame. They put a minigame in this game. If you do it, you can practice your juggling.
If you ask around before one of your missions, you'll hear that Emily is nowhere around, maybe avoiding one of her lessons, but if you track her down, you'll find out that she's just playing hide and seek, and for your trouble, she'll give you a rune, the valuable upgrade currency that she found while hiding. The heart, this voiced item that leads you to upgrade materials and gives you information on any named character you pointed at, as well as general lore information on the areas you go to, has a huge secret that the community kind of pieced together before it was 100% confirmed as true in Dishonored 2. Slight spoiler, but it's a cool one so you can deal with it. The heart is actually the Empress's heart, which is why it's voiced by the same woman. The outsider took the Empress's heart, whether literally or just in the figurative sense that the Void can accomplish, and gave it to Corvo as an artifact, presenting it simply as the heart of a living thing. Not very much living anymore, but knowing the heart is that of the Empress adds so much to the melancholy, depressing energy of many of her lines. This is the Empress truly lamenting the state of the kingdom and her subjects, and the world of the living that she was violently removed from. If you use the heart on the Lord Regent, Hiram Burroughs, the heart even mentions how she misplaced her trust, essentially confirming this is the Empress before the true confirmation in the sequel. She also tells you Burroughs brought the rats to Dunwall. You don't even need to hear his confession to learn that detail. It's pretty cool. The heart is by far one of the coolest parts of the game. Use it on Havelock, and one of the lines hints that he's probably the last person you should be trusting.
He has the bloodlust. He tried to seize control of the military after the Empress. After the Empress was murdered.
Used on Samuel, and not only do you get foreshadowing that Samuel is a much better person than most people here, you also learn more about Havelock as kind of just a terrible dude.
Samuel was once eager to hear Havelock's stories of the sea, but perhaps the Admiral is not what he expected.
In fact, most of the conspirators you're working with appear in a much worse light after you use the heart on them. Pendleton.
For one so steeped in courtly manners, his thoughts do linger long on revenge and murder.
Martin.
Do not be deceived by his talk of strictures. Martin's crimes weigh heavy on his spirit.
Havelock.
He has killed whales and men for profit and pleasure.
Let me tell you, bro, if you want to feel justified in murdering some of those nameless guards, by the way, use the heart on them. So many of the generic heart voice lines directed at guards and such will immediately make you want to slit their throat. Have a little sampler.
He murdered a nobleman, then framed a friend for the deed. When his cousin refused his advances, He sent a watch patrol to beat her to death. He once killed a man just for a change of boots. No one ever mentioned the missing voice. He feels confident he's gotten away with it. He has a pistol and has used it on children before.
But sometimes, morally complex game as this is, you'll feel really averse to killing them because of what the heart tells you. For example,
he's worried. It's been 4 days since he had word from her. His entire family was taken by the plague. It's just him now. He visits his father in the asylum, though the man no longer remembers him. Once he found a turtle by the Red Shore waterfront. He fed it lettuce, leaves, and horseflies.
the heart was such a genius idea because it personifies the nameless civilians and enemies you encounter in both positive and negative ways. Sometimes it makes you want to kill them on the spot, and other times it makes you rethink all the murders you've already committed, wondering if you unknowingly slaughtered a loving father of 4. I'd like to finish this video off kind of where I started. What about Dishonored makes it an excellent stealth sandbox game? You have a pretty wide array of supernatural powers to use, as well as many tools and traps you can choose to use or not, based on how you want to play the game. You can possess animals to sneak by guards without being noticed, or through open pathways that your human form just couldn't access. You can teleport past your opposition or directly behind them to choke them out. You can slow or entirely stop time, either to go on an unadulterated murder spree, catching bullets out of midair and firing 8 shots of return fire before your opponents have even blinked, or just stop time to slip by unnoticed. You can take a wind blast, summon rats, wall hack, and even jump real high. The game gives you so many options and tools for how to approach situations that you can't really make excuses for doing everything lethally, because you have world-bending magic at your fingertips. But this isn't a game that enforces a moral imperative and slaps you on the wrist if you murder a bit too excessively, teleporting you to the start of the level and saying, "Try again, but nicer." No, it allows your horrendous actions, if you choose to go that route, to corrupt the world and people around you, turning them into worse, more conniving versions of themselves as a direct result of your choices. But it also rewards you for doing the right thing, actually clearing your name by not becoming the murderous psychopath that you were framed as being from the start. It sets a better example for your secret daughter Emily. It leaves this plague-ridden city in a much better shape to actually tackle the problem of the pandemic and rat infestation. And most of all, it shames those who betrayed you for their own personal benefit, as they all die knowing that they were traitors to the one good-hearted person who made their success possible. This is why I consider it a sandbox. As far as it being a good stealth game, that's highly subjective. Personally, I like stealth games where the waiting is the planning stage. You can make a move whenever, but waiting for your enemies to be positioned better, for a dialogue to end because it's interesting or might reveal a helpful secret or two, these are the things that I like. What I don't like are things you'll find in Styx Master of Shadows where you need to wait because it's your only option and you'll lose otherwise. In Dishonored, you make a wrong move and sure, you're discovered, but you're also a spell-slinging, sword-swinging badass motherfucker who can put people in the dirt or to sleep with extremely minimal effort. Being stealthy is not entirely necessary, although it definitely makes your job easier if you are, especially in non-lethal playthroughs. Plus, you get to hear people in their element when they think that they're alone, spouting secrets and grumbling about what bothers them before you make your move. The world is so alive and so active, I almost feel bad for exiting stealth to interfere with it. This, in my mind, is what stealth games should seek to accomplish, because I agree, waiting around for the game to happen isn't fun. But waiting around for the optimal time to strike, making your move before anyone realizes what's happened, certainly is. I picked Dishonored to talk about, not only because it's a great game, but because I put a bunch of games I like on a spinning wheel website and it landed on Dishonored. Before I close this video out, why don't we all see what the wheel chooses for us next? Okay, not at all what I expected when I added it to the list of options at the last minute, but here we go. I'll be publishing my first collection of short stories extremely soon. Please check out my website around the end of July and they should be linked on there. I'm very proud of what I've accomplished. I think each of the stories has its own strengths and certainly weaknesses. I'll never improve as a writer if I assume I do everything perfectly, but I'm happy with how these ones have turned out. I think they're as good as can be asked of me at this point in time, but I'm excited to one-up my own work with my future projects as well. Please check it out if you want to support my creative endeavors as well as the channel, and keep your eyes peeled for a video on Bully, and another video about a certain troubled youth who stars in a book as opposed to a video game. Scary, I know, there's no graphics to the games of books, but I promise you it'll be one of my better edited videos and one I've been wanting to make for a good while. Check out my writing, check out my videos, go watch Moist Critical if you need to recover from my subpar commentary with an extremely talented communicator's content, and go have a good day for the both of us. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Yeah, let's put 3 settings on a fan so you can't feasibly turn it off without knowing whether you've turned it off or turn it on faster. And each one you just toggle through them with a pull switch. Also, fuck you.